Hey everybody, this is Stan Wangland, and welcome to Just Thinking 2022. How the heck is everybody doing today? It's fantastic here in Endwell, New York. It's the 15th of February, and it's so nice to say hi to everybody again. I've waited about 5 days to do this show due to Super Bowl weekend and Valentine's Day and all those kind of good things. Probably the last thing anybody wants to hear is a podcast, a YouTube thing, or whatever, unless it has to do with football or something you're particularly interested in. But anyway, I hope you have been well. I hope everybody has been healthy and your family, and life is getting a little bit back more to normal. What I wanted to do on today's show is actually give you a threefer in as short a period of time as I can, because the research is in, which I already knew. The short attention span theater is here to stay in America and throughout most of the world. I talked about that on a show the other day with Stop Driving Yourself Crazy, about people losing the ability to focus for more than a few minutes. Being a college professor and, for many years, an adjunct professor, and, in the nature of being a therapist and a teacher and a trainer, administrator, you obviously have to do a lot of talking to people, with people, and at people. So you can certainly appreciate when people are. It's hard to hold anybody's attention on a good day. So in the world we live in now, it's even a little bit more. But I had three updates that I want to do, and I'm going to be very quick with them. One was about the show that I did 12 days ago on Putin the extortionist, and Putin, relates to the situation that's going on now in the Ukraine. And my next door neighbor is from the Ukraine, not that that means anything. And yeah, as an immigrant from Ukraine, due to all the violence there, her son, her daughter-in-law, and they still have family there. So it's just an interesting thing to watch their reactions to everything else like that. They are definitely not pro-Putin. They're not in the Russian segment of that. The other thing that I want to do is give an update on my show on is the GOP setting up Trump. I got a big response to that, which I didn't think that, given the size of the sample that I'm using at the present time. A lot of people were interested in that, and, you would think that Trump would be an old topic with people, but it's not, and there's some very interesting developments with that. And the last thing I had was the government shutdown that is being threatened right near now by, Republicans and people in Congress, towards President Biden. And, the budgetary types of things, all that kind of stuff. And there's a massive connection between all three of them. Not conspiracy theory, just common sense. And sometimes, well, all the time, I like being right. But I think before it became really prevalent in the news, the idea that I had a couple of weeks ago about the GOP setting up Trump was ahead of the curve. Watching news shows or Meet the Press or anything else. I've just seen that this weekend, and I'll use Trump first. If you've noticed, Trump has been in the news again all the time. The boxes of information that he illegally took to Mar-a-Lago, and they're getting him in now his accounting firm for, all the years that he's been doing it, has dropped him. Chris Christie, the former governor, and his advisor, if you've watched him on any of the news shows, which you might not be interested in doing, but you should. He's a big, commentator on this thing, he always tries to be ride the fence on Trump, but he has not been. He's just said, "Hey, look, man, that was an insurrection on the 6th. Call it what you want to call it. That was bad news. That was illegal. They should be prosecuted." Chris Christie was a federal prosecutor, like Rudy Giuliani was, and all those kind of good things. And he just admits that. Mitch McConnell says that. The Senate Minority Leader, probably soon to be the Senate Majority Leader, quite possibly a very powerful cat, or as Trump would say, he's a powerful hombre. And he is definitely, not a pro-Trump guy anymore. He's riding the fence and everything else like that. If you go back and listen to my show on the GOP is setting up Trump, what's my premise there? Is that they're basically they don't want to alienate Trump too much if they don't have to. Once the midterm elections are done in 2022, they want to assassinate this guy and get him out of there because, folks, there's a lot of Trump supporters out there, I know, and I understand the rationales for those kind of things, but he's poison. He's poison for a national election, whether you believe that or not. And I didn't realize to the extent 2 weeks ago when I made that statement with that, the new facts have come out, even amongst his supporters, loyalist groups, he's lost about 20% of swing voters and everything else. Now, he didn't win by a majority last time. You know, he didn't win, period. He lost by a considerable number of votes. And, whether you believe the lying nonsense or whatever that goes along with that. I mean, Mitch McConnell, the head of the Republican Senate, said, no, that's ridiculous. Chris Christie said it's ridiculous. Other people, they acknowledge that, there was no stealing and lying and everything else like that. But Trump's own voters, or supporters that were, they didn't want Biden, so they figured they'd go towards Trump. No, the polls show that he's losing them. And that's very important. And what's happening is, besides the top dogs setting him up and playing him for whatever they can get out of him at this point, and then they're ready to dump him. And you can see I think you can see very clearly the shit ready to hit the fan on a whole variety of fronts where people are going to start doing this. His loyal people will hang on to him, but even though there are a lot of them, there won't be enough to sustain what politicians really want to do in that kind of thing. He'll be knocked off. And Chris Christie, who I do not like, but sometimes can be very straightforward, said it best. I've noticed that Lindsey Graham, who said, he wiped his hands with Trump on January 6th, and then started coming around with him again. Yeah, Chris Christie said, you got to have an interpreter that speaks Lindsey Grahamese to understand what he's saying. And now Graham is saying, the election, he was wrong, and blah, 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 but this and that and everything. He's more of that scheming to use Trump's numbers as he needs right now and then dump him. There's McConnell, dump him. There's a lot of other people. A lot of the candidates Trump is supporting are very undesirable, and it's not going well with that. And the stuff with the Republican National Committee with that this was just legitimate, political discourse, the rioting at the Capitol. So that's created a rift in the Republican Party when there didn't have to be one, when they were at a distinct advantage with different things due to COVID, due to inflation, due to other things. But, this is a political show. The stock market's right through the friggin' roof. There may be inflation, but that was coming along anyway. He got out of Afghanistan, you may not like how, and it ties into the Putin thing. I'll jump into that. I think Trump is still being set up. Watch the news, see what's happening. A lot of stuff, man. This guy, he's got both feet on a banana peel. And Chris Christie said a very important thing. He says, whenever everybody knows in politics, when it's okay for a little bit of time, but when you're locked in the past, worrying about the past, you lose the voters and you're going to lose the election. People want to know what you're going to do for them. Trump ain't telling people what he's going to do for them. He wants to vindicate himself with all this bullshit about the election. And if you're wrapped up in that, you believe that or whatever, so be it. I'm not here to argue that with you. For a variety of reasons. I'll do another show on that. Not that you're crazy, but that there's, if you believe that, is that, there's things that happen to us that make us think that way, that are perfectly rational, with certain ideas that we just can't get rid of. But Trump is locked in the past, and that's why he's losing those other percentage of voters, the swing voters. They're just saying, they have Trump fatigue. We don't want another 4 years of this crap with this guy. He's not going. He's interested in doing his own crazy things for him. And we're seeing more and more of that. That isn't a setup. That's who this guy is. Now, why do I lump Putin and Trump, and then you'll see the third one together? Because the show that I did on Putin said the same thing. Was never worried about Putin actually invading the Ukraine, and he still might. I mean, there's a possibility. Putin is a racketeer. And one of the hobbies that I have is I love watching all these shows by these former mafia heads that are on some very great sites like Value Network, Patrick Ben-David. They're really good interviews with these guys. And you get a really insight into the mind of the mafia, the mob, Rudy Giuliani, the RICO Act, just historical stuff that I liked. I come from Brooklyn. It's interesting to me, and millions of other people. But Trump is always mentioned in that. And they kind of like him. Because they view him not as a thug, but as a racketeer. And that's the distinction with mobsters. Are they thugs? Or are they, which are heavy-handed guys, hitters, more violently oriented, or are they racketeers? Or are they con artists and slippery people, a lot of illegal activity? Some people are both. But it seems with Putin, I mean, the jury's in on that. I mean, Putin is a former head of the KGB. The KGB, very sophisticated, highly efficient, highly effective intelligence operation using very, very sophisticated psychological warfare, psyops. These are not dopes, contrary to what you see, or thugs and heavy-handed hitters. They have that element, in them, but a lot of it, goes according to plans to destabilize, disenfranchise, do all kinds of different things to upset the apple cart so they can get an advantage, like you would in politics. That's the idea of the intelligence community sometimes, to flip things their way, to give their particular country, their particular cause, a leg up on things. And Putin is, or was a master at that, and I'm sure still is, in addition to being a thug and a racketeer and grasping the presidency of his country, somewhat illegally and kind of crazily over a long period of time, killing his opponents and everything. He's more like a mafia chieftain, like a John Gotti. But a John Gotti who's super intelligent on steroids. He's not a stupid guy. So what did Putin do here? He has the history of doing what he did in Crimea. He looks at our culture and the culture of the West with all the stuff with COVID and all the economic things and all the political changes and all the divisiveness and demoralization, which I'll get into on another show, of our countries. And he said, this is a wonderful time to advance one of our things and load up the borders with troops and different things. See what we can get out of this. Who's done that in history that we can think of? Well, since most people in this country don't even know who the president was 2 or 3 presidents ago, are they going to really remember President Kennedy and the missiles of October? Well, Nikita Khrushchev did that when he put missiles in Cuba. I know because I was a little boy and I saw nuclear missiles being deployed from Fort Tilden, which is on the coast of Brooklyn, right where I lived. Yeah, no shit. The world almost went to war during, the crisis in October, and the ships from Russia were coming just like they are from the Crimea. And President Kennedy was sweating bullets, but he said, no, you crossed this line, and we're really going to take this action. Kind of like Biden and all the allies have done right now of NATO, and said, they're not going to come in there and start a World War III with troops, but you're going to have massive economic sanctions. And Kennedy called Khrushchev's bluff, and he was prepared to go to war. And President Biden has not been prepared to go to war, but President Biden he's kind of done pretty much whatever he said he was going to do if he can get the okay to do it. And he got the backing of bipartisan in Congress to do this. And Putin's not going to lose face. He's going to drop some disinformation out there that we're going to we could invade on Wednesday. And what is he doing? He's doing a classic thing. And I know as a psychologist, and I was a kid, I worked as a salesman. That was my first job, and I worked for 10 or 12 years as a salesman. What do you do when you want to sell a product to somebody? You create a sense of urgency. You need this product. You need to dye your hair. You need to get rid of those pimples. You need to be skinny. You need to be heavy. You need to be muscular. You need to be whatever. Or you're no good. You create a sense of urgency. That's what makes people motivated. It's urgent that I be happy, or I'm scared shitless, and I'm urgent I got to get saved. And that's what he did. He massed all those troops on the border. He used KGB psychology. He threw out a lie, misinformation. The bigger it is, the better. It's not my fault. I didn't do this. This is NATO surrounding me. And you see, people buy into it. Why? Because NATO is the most powerful alliance that's ever been in the world, in the history of the world. But Americans aren't aware of that. Vladimir Putin is aware of that. It's also been going on for decade upon decade. It's one of the most successful things imaginable with all of its weaknesses. It's incredibly strong and growing. And he doesn't want that. So he wanted to create a sense of urgency. However, thank you, President Biden. Thank you, bipartisan Congress. You might have done something, Thank you, even Lindsey Graham. You were on Joe's side on this one, and some of the other people, so you could work together. What did you do? You showed solidarity. Putin has operatives. He knows this isn't, he knows, I'm sure damn well, what the potential is for what we're going to do. He's a very clever guy. You don't get to stay into power that long if you're not clever. Okay, and ruthless. People fear him. America has no, of course American countries can be apprehensive, but the person who has to be worried is not necessarily us. It's him. We're not rolling tanks in there. And God forbid he ever did that and we decided we're going to have a response. We have overwhelming superiority overall in that area. And it wouldn't make any difference anyway if we ever had to resort to nuclear weapons. Who wants to even do stuff like that? Even he knows that. Putin. So what did he do? Today there's a sliver of hope. Oh, let's see, it's Tuesday the 15th. The disinformation for the 16th, we're going to invade, never happened. Unless by some reason, it becomes expedient to do so. Now, how did he create a sense of urgency? Here's where I agree with, in some ways, with President Trump and all people. Fake news? No, I'm not going to call it fake news. The news is there for ratings. The news never used to make money. The news was supposed to be pure. It wasn't supposed to be a money-making thing. It is now. You get nonstop news. Jesus Christ, we've got more information overload on COVID. People don't even know their ass from a hole in the ground. They don't even know that they should wear a mask when they should or when they don't need to anymore. It doesn't matter what the government says, the CDC, anybody. People are just swinging after the belt. So when you have this crisis, supposedly, it's out there 24/7, making you think that World War III is about to begin. And quite frankly, the Ukraine isn't a member of NATO. They haven't been approved yet. It used to be part of Russia, of the USSR. Putin doesn't want all that more influence on his borders, and he's got a bullshit, horrible economy, and he's staying in power legally. He's got to have some kind of issues to show that he's strong and he's leading his country back. Make America great again, Russian style. Anyway, that's my spin on that. And no, I don't think he's going to invade. I think they said during the missiles of October with Khrushchev and Kennedy, you've got two guys ready to fight, and you're standing eye to eye, toe to toe, and the first guy just blinked. And that was Khrushchev at that time. He blinked. He turned the ships back. Putin just blinked. That's my spin. And I think it's a very smart analysis. I don't think you have to be a genius, but I think you have to have some sense of what's going on today. You have to know some things about the past. And hopefully that's what Just Thinking is about. Maybe you learned something today. I learned something just thinking about situations when I see them and trying to figure them out. Not from a conspiracy theory, but how human beings and organizations and systems operate. I'm not saying it's the truth. Now watch, I haven't said this World War III will begin in an hour and a half. But I think that's a pretty good analysis on it. And I wish the news was a little clearer on this. I'm saying some things that are popular now, with sources. But I think they could be a little bit more direct and not have to be, like some soothsayers and say, these are the options. This is this guy. This is how these organizations operate. With things. If you're a student of those things, and there's a lot of good information out there on the internet that you can see from people who were professionals in this field, professional organizations, colleges, universities, think tanks, that'll give you all this information and speculation. And they're not conspiracy theories. They're educated, academic or practical applied people, and it's really good. Now let me give you the last one, and our show will be under 20 minutes. I wanted to make it 10, but these are some complex issues. The other one is the government shutdown. This is the same type of racketeering model, but we call it politics. And why is there going to be a government shutdown? My wife follows politics all the time, and I've really cut back from it. I basically use it in the minimal amount that I need to be informed, and I go in different directions. But I said to her, why do you think they're going to shut it down now? Or talking about shutting it down now? And she says, I don't know, tell me. I said, come on, you're supposed to be so sharp on all these things, and she is. I said, figure it, this is a simple one. We were just talking about, like when I was a shoe salesman, he tells me, oh, Jesus, you're going to get flat feet if you don't wear these things. You create a sense of urgency, or fear or whatever. Why would you throw out this shutdown now? It's always the case anyway with these guys. They just want to hammer the opposing person in office and their administration. So that's one given. But what's the other thing? Why now? Why? It shows you that Biden has been successful with the Ukraine. It actually shows you that the jobs report is up. Inflation sucks, but a lot of things are moving in the correct direction. COVID is coming down. Nobody remembers Afghanistan anymore, except we're happy to be out of there. This is a really big success for Biden. It shows his wisdom. This is my prediction. He doesn't look weak. He doesn't look like a dope like Trump looked. Talking about his buddy Kim Jong-un or, Vladimir. Oh, nothing the matter with Vladimir Putin. No. What are you, crazy? Who would believe that? If you're a Republican or conservative, you want to favor Russia? Please. They're not our, the people I'm sure are lovely, but the government right now is not our friend or anything. It's an adversarial thing. Like the people in China, of course there are adversaries. That doesn't mean enemy to the death, but there are adversaries, face it. Trying to take advantage of our dysfunction with things like that. So what would Mitch McConnell, what would Kevin McCarthy, what would they want to take advantage of? They're having dissension in their own party. Biden is making some progress in other areas as well as failing in others, with their party, with the splits in the Democratic Party. But this is going to prove, hopefully, to be a really good success for him. And the COVID stuff is going bye-bye. Different approaches are being taken. So what do? Create a problem for him, because there's the State of the Union on March 1st. What's today's date? The 15th. Surprise, surprise. So he can walk into the State of the Union, instead of getting a round of applause for doing a good job, he can have people say, see, we got inflation, the state is all terrible, it's all horrible, the government is shut down. That's how we become pawns if we're not critical thinkers and we're biased thinkers. Do I think the Democrats might not do the same thing? No, I think they might do the same thing before the State of the Union. They certainly were brutal to Donald Trump. There were times I would say to myself, he brought a lot of that shit on himself. But there were times I would say to myself, this guy was just joking. Or he's just like a dope. He's just saying something that's dopey that we could all say, or just saying something off the cuff. And he'd get crucified for it. And this is the way we act now. This is the way we act as a culture. And it has consequences. Anyway, but these are three things. GOP setting up Trump, this is my prediction. Absolutely. Say goodbye to him, no matter what you see or whatever. That's my prediction, Say goodbye to him. And he'll fight it tooth and nail. Putin, he's a racketeer and he's an extortionist. And this is what he did. I think the pulling back the troops give him lots of choices. And he can see if he can still rattle us a little bit to get some kind of a deal. And he may get some kind of a deal. Because in order for Khrushchev to turn back, what people don't know is that remember in our country, is that Kennedy said, hey, I will take the missiles, the NATO missiles, out of Turkey that are on the Russian border. But you can't mention that for 6 months to a year. And Khrushchev agreed. So it was a win-win. So we don't know what deal has been made with Putin. And that's the way it works. He pushes, if any deal was made. So anyway, those are my three things. The government shutdown, Putin the extortionist and racketeer, and Trump the racketeer who's dealing with another bunch of playmakers and ne'er-do-wells and, hey man, politicians. What do you expect? It's the political world. What's important to them is their political survival. They're not patriots, by and large. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's show. I have a really interesting show coming up on what's happening to young white males. I've been saying this a long time. I said on my other show, I have a lot of stuff on gender bashing, ageism, bashing of certain groups, particularly this misogyny thing and, older white males or white males, toxic maleness and stuff like that. Well, my show is going to be on the, finally, a lot of information is coming on the effect that it's having on younger males and all the bogus stuff that comes along with that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the show. Be good. If you like the show, hit the subscribe button, give it a like, dislike, whatever it is. And if you want to contact me, it's all in the information there. Contact Stan Wanglund at swanglund@gmail.com. And I'll see you soon.